One topic that doesn't come up in my reviews very often is the topic of religion. However, today is going to be an exception to that rule. Have you ever heard of the story of Abraham and Isaac? This is a story from the Christian Bible about a man who's asked to sacrifice his son in the name of his deity. The game I'm about to review for you is very similar to this because the story is very loosely based off of the story of Abraham and Isaac, also known as the Binding of Isaac. Most of you gamers already know exactly where I'm going, so let's just kick this off. Here is my official review of the PS Vita and PlayStation TV version of The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. The plot is around two main characters, Isaac and his mother, who both live in a small house on a hill. Isaac mostly keeps to himself, playing with toys and working on drawings, while his mother sits and watches Christian broadcasts on TV all day. One day, Isaac's mother is contacted by a voice from above whom she assumes is the voice of God, telling her that Isaac is corrupted with sin. These communications happen 3 times, and Isaac's mother does various things to try to save his soul. The first time, she takes away all of his toys, drawings, and clothes. The second time, she locks him in his room. And the third time, she is asked to sacrifice Isaac to prove her devotion to God. As soon as she bursts into the room with a butcher's knife, Isaac jumps through a trapdoor down to the basement, not realizing that he is going down to much more than a basement in his flee for his life. The plot of the game does have a lot of controversy to it, especially with the religious aspects of the game. But all in all, it's a pretty good premise, and it really shines once you start diving into the game and realizing just what Isaac jumped into when he went through that trapdoor. The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, just like the original PC game it is a remake of, is a randomly generated, Zelda-like dungeon crawling action game with RPG elements thrown into the mix. When you progress through the game, you can go into runs or challenges. Runs are basically starting a new game where you'll pick a character that you've unlocked and you'll go through a randomly generated set of dungeons with the goal of getting through all of the dungeons and all of the boss fights to get to the final boss and clear the game. Challenges are a little bit different. They still have you going through the same randomly generated dungeons, but each of them have various restrictions. You also have to play the actual main game to be able to unlock the majority of the challenges. Actually playing through the game is dungeon crawling. In each randomly generated dungeon, you will go from room to room fighting enemies, kind of solving puzzles, and exploring until you find the boss room, fight the boss, and then go to the next dungeon. This progresses very much like the 2D Zelda games dungeon crawling did. Imagine it like a 2D Zelda game like The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, but without the overworld map. When you go into a room with enemies, you automatically get locked inside, and the doors don't open for you to leave until you've defeated the enemies, even if you have keys to go through locked doors. Once all the enemies are defeated, all of the doors will automatically open, and you will sometimes get rewarded with more health, or money, or item upgrades. And you go through various rooms of various room types. There are the enemy rooms, there are restrooms where you can use a bed and gain some health, there are shop rooms where you can use gained money to buy new items and equipment. The list goes on. As I said before, every dungeon is generated randomly. No matter how many times you go through the game, no run will be exactly like any other run that you've played. Items will be completely different, enemies will be completely different, the room layouts will be completely different, the routes you have to take to the boss room will be completely different. Every single aspect of the game will be different, aside from the character you're using. This is a very unique aspect that really has the game with no feel of repetition. I could go through 100, 150 times, 200 times, and I'll probably still have a ton of stuff to unlock. There are hundreds, if not more, different items for you to choose. And when the Binding of Isaac Afterbirth DLC releases, it's only going to get even longer. This is not an easy game. Twin stick shooters rarely are. Every enemy has a specific attack pattern that you'll have to learn, as well as boss fights having specific attack patterns that you have to learn. While you do have an autosave feature, once you die, you'll automatically lose and you'll have to restart your run. It's not an overly hard game like McMullen's other Vita game Super Meat Boy, but it's got a pretty big amount of difficulty to it. With length, a single run of the game, if you know exactly what you're doing and you don't have any problems, can take as little as 15 to 20 minutes. However, you will have to do multiple runs to be able to see the true final bosses of the game. With length, if you know exactly what you're doing, which when you first start the game you won't, you can get through a single run in 20 minutes, probably get through all of the various runs for the bosses in a couple hours. But given the time you'll need to learn the system as well as the random elements of the game, I would say even if you just want to cover the main story bosses, you're still going to be spending lots and lots of hours on the game. To end the gameplay section, there are two things that I want to mention that are faults, I should say, of the PS Vita version of the game. First of all, the PC version of the game has co-op multiplayer. The PlayStation 4 version of the game also has co-op multiplayer, but for some reason the developers completely removed this for the Vita version of the game. You can still unlock all of the co-op characters in the Vita version, but there's no way to actually play co-op. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The second thing is trophies. Every single time you unlock a trophy, the game doesn't want to give it to you. You'll unlock the achievement for going through the basement dungeon without taking damage. You'll get the in-game achievement, but you won't get the trophy. I've had many of these situations, and it happens every single time I earn a PSN trophy. I have to close the game, restart the game, sometimes a dozen times before it actually gives me the trophy. This is a major problem, and with my research across the net, it's not just a problem with the PS Vita version of the game. PlayStation 4 version also has major trophy issues. As far as the presentation is concerned, the 2D aspects of the game look really nice on the little screen, and they also look really nice when you're displaying the game on a PlayStation TV. The only thing I will complain about with the presentation is the transitioning between rooms. If you've played the PC version of Isaac, you will know that there is no amount of loading sequences or pausing when you go from room to room. It just transitions seamlessly. In the Vita version of the game, you'll have some pauses. For the majority of the game, you'll probably only have to wait maybe 1 or 2 seconds between room transitions, but there have been several times I have had the game kind of just stop and freeze for a while, for as much as 5, 6, 7 seconds before it loads the next room. For load times, this isn't terrible, but when the normal load times are only 1 or 2 seconds, 7 seconds is a really long time. The Binding of Isaac Rebirth seems to be an even better fit on a handheld console than a home console due to the whole bite-sized run mechanics. While the Vita version does suffer from a few things, like trophy glitches, a lack of co-op multiplayer, and some momentary glitchy pauses between rooms, it's still a lot of fun. In the end, this is Isaac on the go, and there are near endless possibilities with all of the content in this remake, as well as the upcoming Afterbirth DLC. I rate The Binding of Isaac Rebirth a 7 out of 10. If you'd like to comment on this further, feel free to below or head to my site.